Joining us now live on the Newsline, regular guest on this program, he is Michael Swanger. Mr. Swanger is the owner and publisher of Iowa History Journal, the very fine publication celebrating its 15th year. The brand new July-August issue is just out. Mr. Swanger, good morning, and thank you for taking the time, sir.
Good morning, Jeff. Always a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for having me back on your show.
Very familiar face graces the cover this time, and the masthead and some of the titles on the main page are green. That was not an accident, I trust, given who the image is on the cover. Tell us about this, please.
You're very perceptive there, Jeff. You're correct. Jessie Field Shambaugh graces our cover of the July-August issue, and those who've been longtime Iowa residents or maybe who are newcomers and are familiar with 4-H know that she is known as the mother of 4-H. So green is the perfect color for us to use because we all know that the original 3-H and the current 4-H pens are green in color. So we had to go with green for that. She is one of those Iowans that we have been wanting to write about for quite some time, and we're very happy to present her for our cover story for our summer issue. And we think it's great timing because summertime is fair time. And as you know, Jeff, fair time means a lot of kids across Iowa who are involved in 4-H are busy preparing, have been busy working year-round to prepare to compete at their county fairs to advance to the big fair. So this is a great time of year to be writing about Jessie Field Shambaugh.
Folks who hear the Iowa Almanac program might recall we did a feature on her just a few weeks ago, June 21st, because that was her birth date back in 1881. When you look at many of the things that she was able to accomplish, you could pick any one or two and say, well, that's a life well lived. But my goodness, the breadth of her work over the course of her professional life, that's really, really impressive.
It really is. When you think about her work as an educator, her work as a superintendent of schools, her work as an author, the work that she did to design the first 3-H pen, and then all the contributions she made to that organization over the years, any one of those would have made for an interesting story of its own. So I was really pleased that when Janice Friedolf with Iowa State University, who has been researching her life for many years, agreed to take on the story, that she was able to wrap her arms around this enormous legacy that Jessie left us. I think, however, if you had to think about her legacy in terms of what it meant to so many Iowans, it was really a lot of the one-on-one connections that she made with her students, because they were the ones who planted the seeds for 3-H and 4-H. Because Jessie, as you know, Jeff, she developed these after-school meetings with her boys' corn club and the girls' home club. They would meet on alternating days. The boys would learn how to apply scientific knowledge to farming, and the girls would learn gardening and cooking and sewing and other domestic arts. And it was that one-on-one connection that she made with a lot of young Iowans who would later go on and teach that to other Iowans that I think is, in some ways, her greatest legacy, because she encouraged people to learn by doing, and that was the impetus for 3-H. And, of course, she did that as a school teacher. She left the state for a couple of years, returned to run and become and eventually win the position of becoming superintendent of Page County Schools, and that was only at the age of 21. She was one of the few women and one of the youngest in the nation to hold that position, and she had to travel by horse and buggy to each of her 130 country schools. So I think that part alone really planting the seed for what became 3-H and 4-H, and the generations that she touched might be her greatest legacy.
Michael Swanger is the publisher of Iowa History Journal. Cover story is on Mother of 4-H, Jessie Field Shambaugh. It's in the new issue of Iowa History Journal, iowahistoryjournal.com, and locations, just an ever-growing list of locations. We'll talk about how you can get the copy how you can get the magazine or subscribe in a moment. But not a surprise that she, in essence, dedicated her entire life to teaching, sometimes in a classroom, sometimes on the radio. And she certainly, due to family history, came by that honest, didn't she?
Well, she sure did. And that became one of the investments within her family. She had a brother who was involved with a seed company. And, of course, as you know, and a lot of Iowans know, folks early on in the seed company business were ahead of the game across the state in different places and would either own a radio station or have their own radio shows. And it was not only a great vehicle for them to advertise their products, but also for them to teach rural Iowans about farming and different methods. So she was able to reach a much wider audience because of radio. And that also had a tremendous impact on our state.
And it was not just her, of course, it was her sisters working for Brother Henry's KFNF radio, but then ultimately over to KMA, and they became part of the legendary Kitchen Clatter program, which was well known nationwide with the newsletter and the syndication of the programs. That thing ran for 60 years. Holy cow. And
incredible.
Just an amazing thing. And KMA celebrates its 100th anniversary next year, as a matter of fact. And the Homemaker program legacy is very strong to this day, that they're very proud of that. The mother of 4-H, Jessie Field Shambaugh, cover story in the current issue of Iowa History Journal. And I know I have found it at the Hy-Vee when I've gone shopping not long ago. Where else might people find it on the newsstands, as we used to say?
You bet. Well, we're at every Barnes & Noble in the state. And then in addition to Hy-Vee, we're at select Walmart and Mills Fleet Farm stores. Of course, the one way you can for certain find it is at iowahistoryjournal.com. And our back stock of this particular issue is going fast. So if you're not finding it on the newsstand at your local Hy-Vee or your Barnes & Noble, then I would encourage you to go online and pick up a copy there.
iowahistoryjournal.com. Get to the stores as well. Often your publisher's perspective talks about things in the magazine, but just as often, I guess, you have the opportunity to pay tribute to individuals. And that was the case this time with an individual from the Cedar Valley who had all sorts of fame, sometimes positive, sometimes not as positive, I guess, and who left us recently. Tell us about this, especially given your love of baseball.
Right. Well, Jeff, I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on Don Denkinger in this issue. He died on May 12th in a Waterloo hospice facility at age 86. A lot of folks there in the Cedar Valley know that Don was a Cedar Falls native. He was born there in 1936. He graduated from Cedar Falls High School in 1954 and attended Wartburg College in Waverly, where he wrestled. But Don was a longtime MLB umpire in the American League, and he ended up umpiring more than 3,800 games, which was 31st all-time among MLB umpires. And that included 4 World Series in 1974, 1980, 1985, and 1991. Unfortunately, I think a lot of folks remember him for the call that he missed in 1985 in Game 6 with the I-70 series, which pitted the Royals against the Cardinals. And he did miss the call. He did acknowledge it over the years. And it really became a tribute to his character. And that's what the column is about, because not only did he have an exemplary career on the field, but he showed exemplary character over the years in the way he handled the mistake that he made. This was before the day of replay. Now, it was replayed on television when he missed the call that night in Game 6, but Major League Baseball officials weren't able to use it at the time. That didn't begin until 2008. So Don was not only great on the field, but he was great off the field. He was very likable, very friendly by all accounts of everyone I've read about who's met him. And I thought that it was time to, well, obviously we wanted to touch on the fact that he had just died, but also I thought it was important to shine a light on his character because he was just a tremendous umpire and a tremendous Iowan.
This is all, this and much more, in the current issue, July-August issue of Iowa History Journal magazine, iowahistoryjournal.com. Well, Tim Harwood is on vacation this week. He certainly has earned that. But before he left, he made sure he got a little mention on the radio, because we're going to talk about an article he wrote for you on an individual from Postville whose name should be very well known to folks, but perhaps this is, again, one of these stories that has been forgotten to history, resurrected through the fine pages of Iowa History Journal.
Well, I hope Tim's ears are ringing somewhere on a beach or a sunny locale. It was good timing for him to be off this week. Otherwise, I would say, can you grab him from the other studio and bring him in and have him talk about his story? Obviously, he's a little better versed at this than I am. He really knows the story inside and out. Jeff, of course, I know you're talking about John Mott,
yes.
Postville's renowned evangelist and Nobel Peace Prize winner and longtime leader of the YMCA. Incidentally, real quick, going back to Jessie Field Shambaugh, she was involved with the YWCA. So we have both organizations represented in this issue. But Mr. Mott really did a tremendous amount of work for the YMCA. He was born in New York, but he was raised in Postville, and it was really his Iowa upbringing that developed his persona, his character. And Tim does a great job of writing about someone who I think gets overlooked quite a bit. Unless maybe you're from that corner of the state, you might not know about him. But in short, John Mott was known as the college evangelist. He was a guy who would establish campus YMCA clubs at colleges across the country. And it started when he was a charter member of Upper Iowa's YMCA group, which was founded in 1885. And then when he went to Cornell University out east, he did the same thing. He founded the club there. And then after college, that's what he did. He started working, of course, for several Christian organizations as well. Later on, he wrote a book that won him the Nobel Peace Prize. But his legacy as someone who would start these YMCA clubs across the country, I think, is really the greatest part of his history and kind of the impact that he made on the world.
The article on John Mott is authored by KXEL's Tim Harwood, and it is part of the current issue of Iowa History Journal. I mentioned that we mentioned Jessie Field Shambaugh in Iowa Almanac last month. We also mentioned Father Paul Doberstein, who, of course, the driving force behind the Grotto of the Redemption near West Bend, and there's mention of that in this issue of Iowa History Journal as well. One of the things that, now again, you're a Des Moines kid, so this really struck a responsive chord, no doubt, when John Busby of the Culture Buzz suggested a story on Riverview Amusement Park in Des Moines. I never had the privilege, but I certainly know it was a fixture there for decades.
Well, you're right. It sure was, Jeff. And it's funny you said that. Growing up here in Des Moines as a young child in the early and middle 70s, looking back at Riverview, I can think about the fun that I had on a lot of those rides, and it almost makes me lightheaded thinking about it. It's getting a little woozy on some of those rides growing up. But no, the memories are fond as they are for anyone else who attended Riverview, which was operated along the Des Moines River from 1915 to 1978. It was known as the Coney Island of Iowa. It entertained visitors from across the state, from across the Midwest, and it was founded by an immigrant named Abe Frankel, who was a Russian-Polish gentleman who arrived in New York City in the 1890s and became a businessman in Des Moines and had entertainment venues that he operated before he and a group of investors founded Riverview Amusement Park. And wow, the memories of Riverview for so many Iowans, you can find them. There's an official Facebook page where there's just hundreds and hundreds of photos that people have shared over the years, and we share some of the pictures from there, whether it's the flying scooters or the infamous Wild Mouse roller coaster, the chutes, the water rides, and then, of course, all the games, skee ball and the fun house, the mirrors, and just an incredible history there, Riverview. It also had a ballroom there, which attracted huge acts over the years, everyone from Duke Ellington to the Everly Brothers. It went through some tough times with fire and floods, but it always persevered. And then in the end, time kind of caught up to it. And another park near Des Moines opened up named Adventureland. And that kind of was the last days of Riverview. But what an incredible amount of memories. I know just for me personally and so many folks from around here who went to Riverview growing up, it was one of a kind. They certainly don't make amusement parks like that anymore.
No, absolutely not, and it's a real shame. Iowa History Journal, iowahistoryjournal.com is where you can go to subscribe, but if you want to pick up and not miss anything, you want to get that next September-October issue, you better hurry and get that subscription in place, correct?
That's right, because our deadlines are fairly early as we're always working on the next issue. As you know, we're knee-deep in September, October already, so I would encourage everyone to get their subscriptions in by the middle of this month, be on time. Of course, if you don't meet the deadline, you can always add an extra $2 after the fact, and we're happy to mail it to you. We just got to pay the post office to bring it to you. But all of our subscription date deadlines are on our website at iowahistoryjournal.com. So if you're not sure when to renew or when you want to start, just look those up and go from there. And like I said, if it's after the fact, just add $2, and we're happy to get you set up with the current issue.
Also available at every Barnes & Noble, most Hy-Vee, and select Walmart, Mills, Fleet Farm, Books A Million, and Hy-Vee drugstores. And as Mr. Letterman used to say, let's hope yours is one of those so selected. IowaHistoryJournal.com, of course, for all the information. Mr. Swanger, a great privilege as always. Wonderful effort. Great stories yet again this month. And we'll talk to you in September with the new issue, if not before.
Looking forward to it. Thanks again, Jeff.
Thank you, sir. Michael Swanger, he is the owner and publisher of Iowa History Journal. Jessie Field Shambaugh, the mother of 4-H, on the cover of the brand new July-August issue.